Welcome to the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast presented by TrainerRoad and with CycleSport.com's team, Alex Wild, Zach Calton. They just finished the prologue at Cape Epic. They're going to give us an inside look at the race. I'm going to go over the stats for the race first, though, so then we all have some point of reference. 26 kilometers or 16.1 miles. Elevation 750 meters or 2,460 feet. This prologue, it's not like those short 10, 15-minute prologues you see in the Tour de France. It's a bit longer than that. It's basically a cross-country Olympic race. And if you think of things commonly, at least here stateside, this metric will make sense. A lot of the time you think of a climby, hilly ride of gaining 1,000 feet every 10 miles. That's a rolly, very climby ride. In this case, we're even higher than that. And this is just, quote, the easy day. You guys had a finish time of 1 hour, 6 minutes and 14 seconds, 6 minutes and 29 seconds behind the lead. You're in GC position 28th out of 49, I think, right now, or 48. Puts you guys in a spot where I don't think either of you have really trained for cross-country Olympic racing recently. You do gravel, you do long mountain bike stuff. How'd you come up with a pacing plan? Because we'll see this on screen here. You guys aren't you aren't built to be punchy, really, high power athletes that are going to have high repeatability right now. You're diesels. And looking at this course, it starts out with a proper climb. After that, you have kind of a long, it looks downhill, but I guarantee you it didn't feel that downhill after that. And then after that, then you have like rolly, punchy, up, down stuff till the finish. How did you figure out a pacing plan? This would be so tricky.
I think we're still learning each other as a team too. So I think we're dubious. I think we talked about it in the beginning of the podcast or the preview podcast, but different power meters, training's training, racing's racing. So we tried to get kind of an idea of strengths and weaknesses, I guess. But I think Zach and I are very similar in that regard. So I think the same places we can work together kind of thing. So I think the strategy was overall that Zach, since he doesn't have a power meter on his race bike, would go up that first climb by feel. And then I'd kind of just be the caboose yelling mercy if necessary from behind, and kind of just give him like feel good, don't feel good, on the limit, whatever. So off the chute, it was kind of maybe a minute, 2 minutes of like rolling stuff to get to that first main climb. So I was like, okay, well, if you're going to do the climb, I'll bring us that, like I'll break the wind to get there essentially, so that we weren't trying to fight for who goes first or have any confusion. And then Zach set the pace up the first climb. And we started fifth or sixth pro team. So our goal was to finish as the first pro male. So we were using those like 1 minute increments as carrots. And yeah, I think pretty much take stock at the top of that first climb and go from there.
Zach, how did you pace yourself going up that climb? Like we said right now, just because of weird situations right now, you don't have a power meter on your bike for this race.
Yeah.
How did you pace it going up that climb? This is probably really relevant for a lot of the audience listening.
Yeah, I had the benefit, like Alex said, it's a more shallow gradient, maybe slightly draftable for the first couple minutes. And he set a pace that I felt, at least in the wheel, good with. And then from there, I think even if I had a power meter, I think I'm still listening to my body and the numbers are what they are. So at the end of the day, even if I had one, I would have been going off of RPE anyway. So you just, I had pre-written. I knew how long it was. I know how, a 10-minute, 9.9 out of 10 effort feels. And, try to keep $1 in your pocket for the rest of the race for sure. But, but yeah, just, you got to go off a feel, whether you've got a power meter or not on some level.
So you're pacing that climb, more or less you're going all out up that climb, not sprinting, but you're like, by the time I get to the top of this climb, I got to feel like I'm not completely cracked, but it's got to be full potential sort of effort.
Just enough money for a Jolly Rancher if he sees one, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. It was one of the few opportunities to put good uninterrupted power down before we start getting into lappers, before we start getting into single track, before a lot of things change where, maybe you don't get the opportunity to put power down. So yeah, it was, I think, an important place to put an effort forth.
What was that descent like after the first climb? Was it like single track technical or?
It was like a extremely steep double track that was extremely blown out and dusty from, we're the last group to go. And there's water bottles in it. And we also caught our first minute markers like right as we crested. And so there was one optimal line in that double track. And then you kind of had to jump over bushes and rocks to make the pass. So it was actually really sketchy. And it also meant you had like very minimal recovery time, because sometimes you get to the top and they, kind of take you down slowly so you can kind of rest for a while. But it's like 10-minute really hard climb and you're at the bottom in like less than 2 minutes. And it's
geez,
like
and you're tense the whole time on that descent.
Yeah. And it was tough for Zach because I think he caught that team, and it's almost one of those where if you're comfortable going faster, it's harder to go slower. Like you're more likely to get caught up on everything in there. But also it's like a Jeep double track where it's almost a bowl. So for him to get out of that at speed, he has to kind of like pick the whole bike up and almost bunny hop all the way to the other. Yeah. So, and then like you said, it was a minefield with water bottles. I found a couple, like just as I caught, like Zach had gone through, and then I caught a water bottle, and a little bit of an adventure, but we held it together.
For context, for people wondering here, there's thousands of riders that go off before these two. Yep. So like, they're and of varying ability levels as well. So hence why we see a lot of ejected bottles and everything else. This is going to put this again in context. Imagine doing like an FTP test style effort, almost not far off of that for like a 10-minute effort. And then after that, your recovery before you have to then punch and do lots of hard stuff thereafter. You're instead of doing a recovery interval, you're having to like do box jumps, and you're having to wrestle a bull and handle all that complexity.
Couple bench presses
it's hard.
In there.
Yeah, exactly. After that, it kind of falls flat. Alex, did you move to the front there? Like you said, the climb was maybe a bit draftable. You have really big power too. You both do. But Alex, you have particularly high power. Did you roll to the front in the flats, and was that kind of the strategy?
So yeah, originally our strategy was for me to go first into that steep descent. I was just asking Zach if he was, fine seeing through dust, and just I was happier having a clean line. But I think on the climb, I was a bit stronger, so I felt like to give him the advantage of that clean sight. And again, we caught that team, so this worked to our advantage. If I got gapped off the back, I told him just keep rolling, like I'll find you. And so once I caught back up to him after passing that team, I essentially went to the front and told Zach, like, I'll ride a pace that I can do the whole time. Only come through if you feel like, one, you can, and two, you could hold or up the pace. So it's kind of like again, we're still learning each other as partners, and I think that's where I can contribute to the team in terms of we're pretty similar, like I said, where we sit on the bike. So the draft is good. He did have to remind me where the wind was coming from a couple times because I was putting him in the gutter on accident, but we're learning as we go.
Yeah. Now, Zach, and for those that don't know as well, Zach is an extremely proficient descender, likely one of the best technical descenders in the Lifetime Grand Prix, if not, in my opinion, the best. So you've got like these complementary strengths, actually, like you mentioned, Alex, in the sense that you can kind of allow one to get a little bit ahead and use their strengths and then work with each other. There's a descent section that they have marked out here. I think it's called the Shake, Rattle, and Roll, the Toyota Tough section and every day has a Toyota Tough section. Was there anything technical on this course, Zach, that today, the prologues are known for usually being less technical?
Yeah, not really. I mean, the first section was technical because you're passing riders and, the other elements that I wouldn't really call it technical, but the Toyota Tough section was very much a flow trail there were two rock rolls where they had lined at A line and B line. And if you've never seen something like that before, but as far as like professional mountain biking goes, it was very much a flow trail. But, if it's also kind of loose over hard, there's definitely time to be had if you feel comfortable pushing the limits. And we caught several teams and put in a lot of times on somewhat mundane descents, where the skill gap was still high.
Yeah, we had we had caught the team just at the top as we go into that Toyota Tough section. And I'd say by the end, we probably had at least 15, 20 seconds just from being smoother throughout the whole thing. Little things like being able to see a double opportunity instead of like coming up to it too slow, like kind of just carrying speed and line of sight. So I think that's where we definitely pulled back time and I can see that throughout the race. I'd say also from where we used to race, I'd say XC puts more of a focus on descending than marathon style racing. So within the field, I think having Zach on the team is going to be stellar because just following him through that stuff will make sure that we're, like you said, at the front.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I want to get into like actually, let's talk about the end of the stage. How did you feel at the end of the stage? Like, were you cracked? Is like Zach, was it all out staying on Alex's wheel and then like
yes,
very happy it's over? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, understood. Yeah. Now, Alex, you've been in situations where you've done these long stage races. Were you able to ride within yourself, or did you feel like that was like a proper capacitive, like drained you effort?
No, I think today I was able to ride within myself, but again, it goes back and forth. Like it's hard to be the nail on the first day, but I think the first thing I told Zach is essentially be a goldfish, right? Like it's 1 hour over 25 hours. And as much as you want to put stock into the one day of racing we have to look at, I think my main goal of the day was like just asking like, what can I do for you? Like, do I need to like, can I carry a bottle? Can I push you? You want to hold onto the bike or whatever? How can we get us to the finish more effectively? Like again, I think it was switching mindsets, right? We're so used to racing one another that in this case, we are trying to get to that finish line as quickly as possible. So I think it wasn't, it's a leave your ego at the door. We got 8 days of racing. Like, let's get after it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes perfect sense. It was super hot. How did you guys did you do anything special for managing the heat? And how hot was it? I couldn't get like a good reading. It was because you're at Mirandal Wine Estate, but I couldn't find a weather station for that specific spot.
We were seeing probably 70 when we got there, but it was very, very proper, like direct sunlight on us. And I don't know, I'd guess like real temp was probably, Alex just pulled it up, max of 86, average of 80. So it was hot and dry. I mean, as far as the heat goes, didn't feel it too much. I dedicated one bottle because it was only an hour prologue. I dedicated one bottle to just be water so I could just kind of keep it on the back and keep that evaporative cooling going. And then one bottle, usually I would just have both be full mix personally, but that was nice to have. But again, the heat wasn't a huge factor in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean,
so 30 degrees C for those listening.
Yeah, it was warm enough to feel it, but probably not long enough to really affect us. And I think that'll be a similar theme. I think it'll get warm on those longer days, but we start at 7 a.m. moving forward. So I think it's more what you do in those first 3 hours when you get that last hour of heat rather than how hot that hour is. I think it's more like kind of punishing you if you're behind on nutrition than it actually is crazy hot, I guess. One thing that was interesting is we went to the riders meeting, and it's the first time that I've seen the UCI govern the use of ice socks. They actually told us we need their permission for them to tell us it is hot enough for us to have ice socks, which one, I think is to begin with because it's very personal, but two, what is my ice sock doing to the image or performance of cycling that you don't like? It seemed an odd thing to govern. But no, we both had shout out to my wife's company, Cool Azul, which is it's a bandana with a little pocket in it. So we both used that as we were warming up. So you just put that on the back of your neck. She made it for ultra running, but we had to take that off before we start. Like they actually governed the use of ice in the race, which I thought was obscene. But
wow, yeah, that is very odd. Maybe they're worried about litter or something. I don't know.
Could be.
Where did you guys warm up, and how did you warm up for this? Because this is not like your typical race that you guys are training for. Zach, did you bring rollers or something?
No, luckily this one, I mean, it's just logistically really difficult to get rollers out here and such. But and like just my personal preference too is to ride around and get a feel for the bike, feel my tire pressure. I don't know. I feel like you get a better feel off of rollers. But luckily, this venue, it has a pretty nice little road that's like 4 or 5%, and you can get probably 10 to 10 minute effort depending on how far away you go. So warm up was pretty easy today. We'll see because we kind of moved a couple times throughout, so we'll see how it goes from here. But not too bad. Just did our little efforts on the road and cruise to the start from there.
Yeah, I know the audience is normally pretty nerdy, so I guess I'll just run through like specifically what the warm up is because they love that stuff. But for me, it's normally 10 minutes around like 50% of threshold, so like 180, 200 watts, just kind of dollying around, get the legs open, and then do a 9-minute ramp. So the first 3 minutes will be standard zone 2 endurance. The second set of 3 minutes is like tempo, kind of kissing sweet spot, and then the last 3 minutes is kind of like lower end threshold, higher end sweet spot, just to kind of ramp through the zones. And then you do 3 minutes chill again. And then you have the option to do 3 30-second spin ups. But normally if the first one, like I feel open and I'm over the power, I kind of just cut it. Like it's more of, do I need this or not? And then from there, it's just spin to the line. We were supposed to be there 15 minutes early. So once I was done, I kind of just dawdled, and then as we were in line, I just held the fence and kind of backpedaled to just, I guess, keep the blood flowing a little bit. A nervous tick of sorts.
Yeah. That's like a Team Sky style warm up, almost similar in some respects.
I think that the warm up is pretty standardized these days. Some version of that is what I'll do for almost every Grand Prix or one day race. And then fueling was carbs fuel gels. As soon as I hopped on the bike, one carbs fuel gel. One as we were in the start hut with 30 seconds to go, again to make sure that the body is close enough to working out that we don't get the insulin spike from it. And then I did one 30 minutes into essentially an hour effort. So 150 grams today for roughly an hour and 45 of ride time.
All right. Lots of carbs. Good process. I want to talk about tomorrow really quick. We've got 92 kilometers, 57 miles. 2,750 meters or 9,022 feet. That's a big day. When you look at the profile, it doesn't come by any individual large climbs as much as, there are some big climbs, but it's a lot of punching. It's kind of like a death by 1,000 cuts sort of thing.
Yeah.
And looking at just like when you look at the map and where the trails go all throughout the day, it just kind of explores the whole perimeter and hills of like that region where you guys are at. So nonstop up and down. What's the plan for tomorrow?
It seems like it's going to be a little more tactical, a little more double track early, and not as much climbing. It's kind of backloaded with the climbing, so try to stay in position and follow moves early, and we'll kind of have to race it, as racers at that point, I think. And then I think also it will play to our strengths being backloaded too. So from there, I think eventually there's some pretty steep climbs in the back half, and we'll have to, see where we're at. But definitely we'll have to communicate through, kind of do some bunch racing early on and stay on top of fueling and hydration so that, like Alex said, when it heats up at the end of the day, we're ready for it.
Yeah. It starts off and right around 10K, you have what looks to be on the profile. It's always kind of hard to tell for sure, but it looks to be a pretty steep steep spike, so to speak, of a climb. And like you said, double tracky, that sort of thing. That'll make things really tactical and people kind of fighting for that position. And then at the end, if you've burned too many matches, you're probably just going to bleed time throughout the rest of that day because it's going to be so up and down nonstop. Looks to be higher from what I can tell from the weather. It looks to be like similar weather in the sense that it's going to be hot. No torrential rain or snow or anything else coming in. And it's going to be the first proper marathon day. So 2 pigs in mud tomorrow. It's the sort of terrain that you guys are trained for and happy for. It's going to be a good experience. Everybody, to follow along, you can go to the Cape Epic YouTube channel and you can watch the live streams and recaps. It's the best coverage in cycling, I would say. Like, it's extremely good. It's very impressive every year what they do. You can also download they call it the Epic Series app. And what it does is you can select Cape Epic, and then you can follow these riders here, teamcyclesport.com. If you look up Cyclesport, you'll find it. You can follow them, and then after that, you can even get like push notifications that are updates, and you go through time checks. The whole thing really makes it feel cool. If you're in the US over here, those notifications will come in the middle of the night, most likely for all of us, but you'll be able to catch up on it just the same.
So make
I'm
sure
excited.
you put that phone
It's
on
gonna-
loud. Can't be sleeping.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't use Do Not Disturb. Please disrupt your sleep for an entire week for this. So this is going to be an incredible race. We're really excited for it. Great job, guys, on getting through that gnarly, punchy prologue. And now tomorrow we get into the real world stuff. It's going to be great. Everybody, go check out Zach and Alex you can check them out on Instagram. We'll leave the links down below. You can check out cyclesport.com, their team sponsor. We'll also leave that link below. And we will talk to you tomorrow. Thanks, guys.
Thank
Thanks.
you.